So we will call to order this meeting of the California State Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Subcommittee number 1 on education. The purpose of today's hearing, it is an informational hearing to look at community college affordability, financial aid programs, etc. We have several very knowledgeable witnesses who are going to be testifying. One of the key questions that we'll be asking is whether the president's proposal for 2 years of free college tuition would be applicable to California. If so, how would we afford it? Is it a reality? Is it an aspiration that we need to adopt here in California? How does that fit into the rest of California's financial aid picture and the community college affordability? What would be the impact on California's community colleges if suddenly we advertised community colleges free? Or would it, as some of us think, likely increase dramatically the pool of diverse, underrepresented candidates who have no one in their families ever attended college, who would suddenly have an interest in this with the obstacle of cost, at least partially, no longer an obstacle? Would it negatively impact quality because the resources of community colleges might be spread more thinly across more students? We're not here today really because we have any answers right now. We really are here to do what you should do in a hearing, and that is hear what you, the people, have to say. So we'll hear from 3 panels. After the 3 panels, we'll be open for public comment. And then my colleagues and I will take the information provided back and look at whether legislation or further budget action may be warranted. Now, first I want to welcome my colleagues who are here. My vice chair, who has been now in his 2nd year of working on this committee, doing a great job, John Morlock, to my left. And to my right, our other colleague, Ben Allen. I want to introduce the panels that we'll be hearing. I'll introduce each panel as it comes up. The first panel will talk about the background of financial aid in the community colleges and the national movement for community college affordability. Before those folks come up and I introduce them individually, I'd like to ask Senator Morlock or Senator Allen if they have any comments they would like to make. Hearing none, I'd like to invite up Dan Troy, who's the Vice Chancellor of College Finance and Facilities Planning for the California Community College Chancellor's Office, Catalina Mistler, the Division Chief, Program Administration and Services of the California Student Aid Commission, and Paul Golozewski, the Principal Fiscal and Policy Analyst from the Legislative Analyst's Office. And I will ask you to testify in that order. Each panelist has been asked to take between 5 and 10 minutes, but there's no strict timekeeping here. Between 5 to 10 minutes to make your initial presentation, and then colleagues on the committee will certainly have an opportunity for questions or comments.
I guess my only opening comment is that I really have been struck by how little, if you actually start to add up all of the costs associated with going to community college, how little of it actually is in the tuition and fees portion. It's only 6% or so, depending on the school. And so let's think about that also within the context of the fact that so few students who go to community college fully intending to transfer to four-year college end up actually making that transfer. And thinking about affordability in that context, thinking about the fact that we've set up the system that has all sorts of other costs associated, and for a variety of complex reasons, those students for whom this really ought to be an incredibly important stepping stone and route to a higher education, it's just not working for them.
And thank you, Senator Allen. That provides some context for our first witness, Vice Chancellor Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as your agenda notes, I'm Dan Troy. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Fiscal Policy at the California Community College Chancellor's Office. I will be working today from the handout I hope all of you have in front of you. I will try to move through it expeditiously given the number of very qualified testifiers you have before you today. Before I do get into it, I'd just like to note that before we get into all this detail, and I'll be providing a good amount of it in the handout, that we should take a moment, I think, to recognize and acknowledge the very, very significant major commitment the state already makes to ensuring affordability and access to our students. We have community colleges, the lowest fees in the nation. We have a very generous BOG fee waiver program, as we'll get into some more detail in this overview. So I think we should just take a moment to acknowledge that the state has made a big commitment toward affordability and access, and we've got some recommendations for changes along the way, but we're starting from a point of strength. Moving from the cover page, I'll start with some of a brief overview of the history. So our first community college, junior college, if you will, began in 1910 in the state with a mission to provide access to higher education regardless of ability to pay. So starting in 1910 and moving up into the 80s, there were zero fees for our community college students. They paid nothing. It wasn't until 1983-84, in the midst of a budget crisis, that the state added a $5 fee per unit in order to mitigate some of the reductions that were occurring as part of the budget discussions. Concurrently with that fee increase, they created the Board of Governors fee waiver program for students who did not have the ability to pay the fees. Looking at page 3, you can see in a bar graph there the history of our fees per unit. It was zero until the mid-'80s. It's zigzagged down a little bit a couple of times as the state had money to put back into students' pockets. But generally, you can see the trend over time has been up. And it currently sits at $46 per unit, and it's been that way since 2012. Page 4, I'm not going to go into detail on all of these programs, of course, but just so you know, there are a wide variety of programs, both federal and state, that do support financial aid for our students. My comments today will mostly speak to the BOG fee waivers and the Cal Grant programs, but there's also a significant amount of support through the federal programs, particularly the Pell Grants. On page 5, you can see the amount of dollars that do go to students by those sources, or rather by those types of aid. As you can see, grant aid makes up the vast majority of support for our students, so not loans. Over 92% of the nearly $3 billion in aid from all sources that go to our students are in grants. The loan aid in the red there is mostly the federal grant program. On page 6, we have another pie chart, and what that's doing is breaking down the source of the dollars. So you can see the red wedge is the state share of that roughly $3 billion of aid that goes to students. The overwhelming majority of that is in the BOG fee waiver program. The blue is the federal, mostly the Pell Grants. Page 7, we can take a look at you see a little bit of our recent history in terms of enrollment counts. So the blue bar are our credit enrollment head counts. The red bar is the number of those head counts that receive the BOG fee waiver. As you can see over time, the trend has been up, and that it's taking a higher proportion of our students are now accessing that BOG fee waiver. The number of Pell Grants is also significant, and you can see the Cal Grants, which are restricted in the Budget Act, make up a relatively small amount of the recipients in our system. We'll talk more about that later. So as page 8, we'll talk about the dollar value of that. So the previous page was the number of awards or the recipients of the awards. Here we're looking at the dollars. As you can see, the value of the Pell Grants is close to $1.8 billion. So in terms of the students who receive that, that's a very significant financial aid for them. The blue bar is the BOG fee waiver program. Again, that number has been increasing rather dramatically in recent years. And the green is the Cal Grant disbursements. So that has ticked up a little bit, but it's been generally fairly low for community college students. Page 9, I won't read every point on this in the interest of time, but essentially why has the BOG fee waivers been growing? There's multiple reasons for that. Mostly it's because the fees themselves have increased. We've gone from $11 to $46 per unit in a span of about 10 years. So that means that more students are eligible for aid. It means they're more likely to seek the aid as well. Certainly with the economic downturn as well, we have more needy students in our system, so they're more likely to be able to become eligible for the BOG fee waiver. On page 10, we show here the different types of ways that students become eligible for the BOG fee. The Part A is for students, spouses, or parents who are recipient of public aid. So if you're on TANF, for example, you're going to automatically be eligible for the BOG fee waiver. B is an income-based measure. So if your family income does not exceed 150% of the established federal poverty standard, you are eligible for a BOG fee waiver. And C is a FAFSA-driven calculation that shows that if you have a minimum need of about $1,100 per student, you are also eligible for the BOG fee waiver. Page 11 is a pie chart that shows the distribution of those, of how students become eligible. As you can see, Part C is a very minimal, Part A is a very minimal eligibility piece. It's mostly the A's and, the B's and C's. Page 12, I think the point I just want to make here on page 12 is that note that that we're only waiving the fees alone. That does not provide any other financial support for students. The BOG fee waiver does not provide grants to students for tuition or books or anything like that. It's only waiving those fees that the students would otherwise pay. No other support. And I will note on the final bullet there too. SB 1456, which was the Student Success and Support Act the legislature passed about 3 years ago, did include require students to pass some eligibility in progress standards in order to maintain their BOG fee waiver. So there is some accountability on the student to perform in school as a recipient of public aid. Page 13, on the left, we're seeing the dollar totals. So the blue wedge represents the amount of revenues received in the 14-15 fiscal year. That's the last fiscal year. And the red amount is showing the BOG fee waivers that were provided to students. So the benefit of the BOG fee waiver to students was over $800 million. So roughly 2/3 of fees are waived in our system. The right shows that broken down by head count. So about 55% of students in our system by head count receive a waiver. So mostly what you're seeing is that part-timers who take 1 or 2 courses are generally not as likely to get a BOG fee waiver as a full-time credit-seeking, degree-seeking student. Page 14, there's some more support for our students provided in the 15-16 budget. We received $39 million in supplemental grants for community college students who receive a Cal Grant B. They're receiving some extra dollars in order to help pay some of the other costs that go along with attending school. Page 15, we're going to move on to Cal Grants a little bit. I know that my friend from CSAC is going to speak more about that, so I'm not going to go into excruciating detail. Later on in the agenda, I'll present some ideas we have for making this program work a little bit better for community college students. Page 16, you see some of the data there for recipients in our system. Note that the Cal Grant B is the primary source of support for our community college students. Page 17 shows that by dollars, so it's fairly similar. I will move to page 18 and talk about the college promise, the free community college movement. We've been hearing a lot about it at the national and, of course, at the state level, too. A couple of points I'd like to make in order to ground our discussions for this spring and going forward. You've heard this before, you'll hear it again. I mean, fees are a limited part of the problem for our students. It's the other costs of going to college that are significant. Fees in the community college system are, by national standards, relatively low. And as you've seen, we waive about 2/3 of those credit units in our system already. So if you're needy, there's a good chance that you don't pay any fees at all in the community college system. Does that make the cost of attendance cheap? Not necessarily. You've got other costs involved in going to school, the opportunity costs from not working, books, transportation, food, housing, all that. None of that is addressed by the BOG fee waivers. So we can raise or lower fee waivers to some extent. It's only going to have a limited impact on those other cost factors that affect the cost of attendance. Moving to the final bullet, I do want to say that there is a pretty serious interaction between the fees in our system and the amount of revenue that comes into our system to support our students in terms of access, success, or equity. So we need to be very, very careful of that interaction as we contemplate any changes to fees going forward. Page 19 will help illustrate that for you a little bit. So here you see some of our historical funding. The blue bar on the graph shows you the Prop 98 support for our system in recent years, and the red part of the bar is the student fees. So note that the fees come on top of Prop 98. This is additional financial support to our system. So these are dollars that help support access, they help support categorical support programs for our needy populations and our students. So we need to be very careful about, know that if we were to eliminate all fees tomorrow, that would be an overall reduction in support to our system. So that's a very significant issue. And I show here the final bar shows the 14-15 year. It repeats the 14-15 actuals from the prior bar, and shows you that we would actually go down in support of roughly 5% if we were to eliminate fees. Plus, we would have to use some of those Prop 98 dollars to backfill that fee loss to the colleges. Otherwise, they would have a hole in their budget. So we would be potentially diverting support for our students in order to waive those last remaining fees in our system. So that's something we need to be very mindful of as we move forward. Finally, on the last page, for I think all the reasons I suggest now, both maintaining the funding support for our students and reflecting the fact that fees are only a very limited part of the cost of attendance problem for so many students, we would recommend that most of the changes that would come in our state's financial aid support system would be on the Cal Grant side. We certainly have some ideas about that. One of them would be extending the March deadline to September, as many of our students enroll in August and September. They're eligible for the award. The state has made that a priority. Let's extend that deadline so that students who can benefit from those awards are able to receive it. We'd like to see both the number and the value of the Cal Grant B Access Awards increase. It's about $1,600 per recipient right now. We'd like to raise that to at least $3,000 so that we can support more of our students as they pursue a college. Also, the Cal Grant Cs, again, the award value there is very low. It's a little over $500. We'd like to see that become a much more meaningful award for students. If we can get it up to $1,500 or $3,000, any progress would help those students. And again, Cal Grant Cs are targeted towards students in career technical education programs, so that is a good linkage with some other priorities we're seeing in this budget this year. Finally, there is a lot of financial aid support out there already. We'd like to see more. But one thing we can do is just make sure that our students are aware of what support is out there. A lot of students think that they just can't afford college, that there's no support for them. A few $1 million in outreach money could make a big difference to students. We have an I Can't Afford College campaign that's funded right now at about $2.5 million, $2.8 million. It's been frozen since 2004. So we're not able to penetrate as many markets. We're not able to run ads in Spanish. Just a couple of $1 million of increase there could do a lot of good to students and letting students know that college is attainable and affordable for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Troy, and we'll hold questions from committee until we've heard from the whole panel. Ms. Missler.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and committee members. I'm Catalina Missler. I'm the Division Chief of the California Student Aid Commission. As you know, the Student Aid Commission's mission is to make education beyond high school financially accessible to all Californians. Over the last 60 years, the Commission has provided California state grants to students and families, offering them access and choice to attend an institution of higher education. Cal Grants, along with other financial aid resources, covers a large portion of the cost of attendance for low to middle income families. The California legislature and the governor have supported the Cal Grant program, and its continued support has offered over 300,000 Cal Grants to low-income families, with approximately $200 billion to those needed families who are students who are attending California public and private institutions of higher education. Last year, the Commission processed over 1.4 million FAFSAs, 45,000 DREAM Act applications, and over 1 million grade point averages to determine eligibility for Cal Grant entitlement and competitive grant programs. We worked closely with the California public and private high schools to inform counselors about the Cal Grant program and to assist them in submitting grade point averages for their students. Our Cal Grant delivery system processes every applicant to determine the best Cal Grant based on their eligibility criteria and the requirements of the program. Students meeting the criteria for an entitlement or a competitive Cal Grant who choose to attend a community college are offered a Cal Grant A or B or C award. The Cal Grant A award is used to pay tuition and fees at a four-year institution and is held in reserve for the community college student until they transfer out to a four-year institution. A student offered a Cal Grant B award at a community college is eligible to use the Access Award, which we consider the living allowance portion of the award, which is $1,656. This year, the College Access Tax Credit increased the Access Award by $8. And we hope to see an increase each year based on the funds made available from the tax credit. In addition to the College Access Tax Credit increase, as Dan mentioned, SB 93 provided funding to the California Community College Chancellor's Office for the 2015-16 year, the Full-Time Student Success Grant for supplemental grants to full-time community college students who are receiving a Cal Grant B Access Award. This would increase the Cal Grant B with Access Award of about $600 for full-time recipients, so it increases the Access Award to $2,256. Cal Grant C program is for students who do not qualify for the Cal Grant A or the Cal Grant B, and so they're considered for the Cal C. These are students who are pursuing a training or a certificate program at a community college or another vocational school. That award is up to $2,462 to cover for books and supplies. Students transferring from a community college to a four-year institution who did not get a Cal Grant during their enrollment at the community college are eligible and considered for a transfer entitlement Cal Grant. That transfer entitlement Cal Grant offers the student the tuition and fees coverage for the system-wide fees at the four-year institution, CSU, UC, and private institution. For the 2014-15 academic year, approximately 172,000 Cal Grant awards were offered to community college students for a total of $230 million. 15,000 of those are Cal Grant A students who were offered a Cal Grant award, but it is held in reserve until they transfer to the four-year institution. In addition to the Cal Grant program, the Student Aid Commission partners with several other state agencies to administer various financial aid programs for certain careers and population of students. We partner with the California Department of Social Services to administer the California Chafee Foster Youth Grant Program. That offers an award of up to $5,000 for foster youth students. Of the total grants offered from the Chafee Grant Program, 72% are awarded to students attending a community college. We partner with the California Military Department to administer the California National Guard Education Award Assistance Program, offering up to $1,656 to community college students. Of the total awards offered, 23% are awarded to California community college students. We also partner with the California Department of Education to administer the Child Development Grant Program. The program is intended for students pursuing a career in child care and development. Students attending the community college are eligible for up to $1,000 at the community college, and students at the community college receive 90% of these grants. The Law Enforcement Personnel Dependents Grant Program provides need-based educational grants for dependents and spouses of California law enforcement officials who were injured or died during their line of duty. The award amounts equal the Cal Grant amounts, and about 53% of these awards are offered to students at the community college. The Commission is excited to prepare ourselves for the earlier FAFSA. I'm sure you've heard the earlier FAFSA and the prior year, where beginning for the 2017-18 academic year, the U.S. Department of Education is releasing the FAFSA instead of January 1st, is opening it up on October 1st, 2016 for the 17-18 academic year. Our goal is to inform families and students as early as we can about the availability of financial aid, not only Cal Grants, but the opportunity to inform students where they choose to attend. If they plan to attend a community college, the financial aid resources such as the BOG fee waiver and other resources that may be available to them. for the CSU and the UC, the state institutional aid, and information about loans so that their families can make better decisions and earlier decisions about where their child can attend. The Commission looks forward to receiving support for the financial aid programs offered through the state for the most needy and deserving students and families. We all continue to encourage students to take the right steps, to keep their grades up in high school and do well. We should continue encouraging the students to do the same after high school and supporting them with the financial need to assist in covering the costs of their higher education and to reduce the financial barriers of college. Thank you.